Ladies and gentlemen, now I will be calling upon John Bellavance. He's our second speaker. Dr. John Bellavance is an experienced educator with 24 years of teaching in public and private schools in Victoria, holding leadership roles such as head of faculty and head of e-learning, specializing in information technology, commerce, and ethics. He integrates values education into his teaching, impacting students, parents, and communities for over 40 years. With a PhD from Monash University, focusing on ethics, psychology, and technology use among youths, he anchored the acclaimed book Values in the Digital World and founded Dr. John Online to further promote values education. Beyond academia, he has a history of activism, including anti-drug initiatives in the United States and Canada, earning recognition from the White House. Currently, Dr. Bellavance holds leadership roles with the Universal Peace Federation, the International Association of Academicians for Peace, and Sun Moon University, contributing to global peace, education, economic development initiatives. And Dr. Jones is going to concentrate on the topic of his talk is treat your spouse like royalty. Please welcome Dr. Jones.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me to speak. It's a great honor to be here. To be perfectly honest with you, the atmosphere in this room is people who care and people who have a lot of love in their hearts and who have strong values. And we know with the current global climate, I happen to be part of an NGO that has general consultative status with the United Nations. There's only 243 of such millions of NGOs in the world. There's only 243, and two of them is Anne's organization and mine. And that means that we can have an impact, or we can suggest things to the United Nations. It also means that we are trying to support the UN in its efforts for peace building, but I have to tell you, we don't live in an easy time, as you well know. And it doesn't mean we have to give up. We don't give up. But it's a difficult period right now for peace building. What I'd like to share with you is what I think is the essence of peace building, which is our values. We cannot avoid that. I just want to give you my background. My doctorate is in moral psychology and the use of technology by high school children. I've published a book on the topic. Our federal government has introduced legislation to try and control the use of technology by young people, and it has a role to play. But I have to say the most important thing, if I can share with our federal member, is that I found in my studies is that young people it's a story of good and bad. There are some young people that really do very terrible things with using technology. But I also found my story is that actually young people, even at grade 9, which is 13, 14, 15-year-old, are the ones that I followed through high school. They had empathy. They stood up to bullies. And they said, no, you can't do this. So there's another side to this story, and that is the human experience. And that the human experience is there's some bad people, but there's actually a lot of really good people, right? So the story here that I want to share with you is to start with this post by a young lady. I couldn't post her picture. This is just a picture from, you can get copyright to use. Is she talked about, I lost the plot. She had broken up with her loved one. She was probably about 20 years old, 23 years old. And she said, you know what? I think I've lost the plot, and I'm just going to go out and get drunk this weekend. Okay, the topic that we're talking about is, in my opinion, the relationship between men and women is the most difficult thing. As Anne mentioned, we have 4 sons and they're happily married. Doesn't mean they're not going to struggle. We're people who have values. We've tried to give our sons values. We're also spiritual people. We understand the importance of spirituality. But you know what? There's no guarantees in a relationship between husband and wife. There is no guarantee. It is a very challenging thing. So if you asked me, John, what would be in your studies would be the most difficult thing that I think we face is the relationship between husband and wife. That can be amazing, but it can be very difficult. So this particular post in some way, and please, whoever's MC, let me know when I'm coming. I tend to go on a little bit. You'll let me know. Otherwise, you won't get rid of me. Anne always says, don't give John the microphone. He's just going to go on. This quote shows us, in a way, this challenge we face. First of all, I have to say to you, I felt that way sometimes. I'll be honest with you. I love my wife, had great position, I love a beautiful house, nice car. I'll be honest with you, I'm really a blessed person. I've got a lot. But there are times when I feel I've lost the plot. That meaning in my life is gone. I'll tell you such a story. Some years ago, I was the vice president of the Nelson Mandela Foundation. The president is a black South African, Dr. Steve, an amazing guy who actually had to leave South Africa because the white regime was going to kill him. So he ended up in Botswana. Anyway, he's a man of great love and who is a great man of justice. And anyway, there was every year we have the annual Nelson Mandela speech. We had very prominent people come and speak. Julia Gillard spoke one year. Anne and I met her, lovely lady. And Steve asked me, are you coming to the lecture? And I said, I was like, yeah, sure. I was in a period in my life where, even though for 40 years, I've been teaching one thing to everyone, including my students, and that is that the value of your life is when you live for the sake of another. Yeah, so, great talk, right? Nice words. But I got into, for about 3 weeks into a space where I actually questioned my own value, because I thought, I do get to that stage and I go through up and down where I think really living for the sake of others is important. Who cares for me? Now you might say, well, a lot of people care for you, John. Anyway, I have to tell you, if I may share, can I share a spiritual experience? I don't like to do this, I'll be perfectly honest with you, but I have to, because it brings to the point that my own spiritual experience of what I realize is the meaning of, what is the plot, what's the meaning of life. So for about 2 weeks, Anne didn't even necessarily know, you didn't necessarily know I was, did you? Okay. I was kind of in this dark space, and I still went to the lecture with Anne because I had to, being part of the organization. But in my mind, I was thinking, yeah, you know, I think it was Mr. Costello who gave the talk that year, and he said, you know, Mandela lived for others, and I went, yeah, right. And after a while, I began to realize, because of my own spiritual experience and reading and religious background, that all my life, what I feel God has been teaching me is, John, it's not about you. And that took a long time for me. I'm very much a John guy. It's not about you, Johnny. It's about others. And then one morning I realized, in that moment I snapped out of it, and I came to a certain conclusion that I realized, actually my life is very blessed because I have had the mindset of living for the sake of others. The benefits of that you cannot measure. And at that moment I prayed to God and I said, Heavenly Father, thank you for giving my life meaning, because I felt God had taught me this. And it was only once, and you can take it for where you like, but immediately in my mind and my heart, God said, thank you for giving my life meaning. So for me, as a spiritual person, I felt this is the core of the universe. If there is a creator and there's purpose in life, and as a scientist I can share with you, if you want, it's a whole lecture about the fine-tuning of the universe. Have you ever heard of fine-tuning? You should read it. There are physicists right now who have, including Hawkins, who is kind of fighting it a little bit, but who did agree with it, is that the universe we live in begins with a fine-tuning. In other words, it's from the very start of the Big Bang, everything had the right amount of hydrogen, and all of the physics, the laws of physics had to be in place for this universe to expand and to actually exist as we are, including biological life. So for those who are atheists, the response, of course, this is off topic, Dan's going on, but it's so interesting, is the multiverse. So Stephen Hawkins believed in multiverse, and the idea is that we're just one universe that actually managed to exist in the way that it does. So that explains you don't really need God, it's just by chance. All right. So the conclusion I came to is that if I become a self-actualized person, that I realize my potential, it really is to do with relationship to my wife, my children, my friends, to you, and to our God. So relationships is the core of the universe, and of course the central value of life and most spirituality is love. Now you might say, you know, that's very philosophical, John, but actually it's not, because if you study ethics, if you study moral philosophy, moral psychology, there are many ways of approaching what's right and wrong, isn't there? I mean, particularly ethics. There's many different ways of how do you judge right and wrong? We all have different opinions about this. And of course, one of the great philosophers of our time is Immanuel Kant, who wrote the categorical imperative, which sounds like really nice words, but he basically was saying, look, in the end, morality, what's right, what's wrong, is to do with, if I have values, then I have to apply those values to myself equally and to you. But you know what? If you've got children, if those that have children, sometimes kids do things that are wrong, and what do? You're going to apply the rule of law? You know what you do as parents? You do absolutely your best to love them and forgive them. So I just want to say that the core central value of life is love. So this brings me to this diagram, subject partner and object partner of love. We all need an object partner of love. My object partner of love is you, Anne, and my children, and my friends, and my grandchildren, and so on, right? So I have an object of love, And that object of love actually fills my heart and makes my life real and makes it joyful. So love becomes the central value that brings the subject and object partner of love. But we also have a subject partner of love. You may have to think about that one. Your object partner of love might be your cat or your dog or your spouse, right? We all have something that we really love, and that's what life's about. You have to ask yourself, who is the subject partner of your love? I'll leave you with that one. Now, the big thing that Anne brought about is that what comes first? Is it giving or receiving? And I don't have to it's like preaching to the choir here. You folks are all really deeply spiritual people. You would know right away that first you start by giving. But this is not really understood very well in society. It's really about, it's a bit like we're adults, but in our hearts we're teenagers. I've noticed this a lot. I got to get the attention. Won't share a personal story, but I just saw that very recently in a very close couple of mine. We want to receive. Of course you want to receive. But what comes first? Is it giving or receiving? That's the hard part. That's the hard part. Even though I intellectually understand that, it doesn't mean that I necessarily emotionally understand that in every situation. So please, we're all in the same. You got to remind yourself over and over again, giving comes first, and then it comes back. It doesn't always work, as we all know. Particularly when we look at relationships, husband and wife, men and women, any relationship, it doesn't always work. In other words, we don't get it back. But nevertheless, it works. So the principle that I have tried to live by in my life, and my passion is values education, and I'm writing a book at the moment which I'm going to send to our Minister of Education. We've already communicated with our Federal Minister of Education, a whole bunch of academics who are saying to our minister, hey, we really need to have good values education in schools, and there are some gaps here. Although there's a lot going on that's really good, there's some real serious gaps. That's for another topic. So what I concluded, I have to say with you, the number of times that living for the sake of others as a thought that I tried to internalize has saved me, I cannot count. What I mean by save me is that, I get into a place where, she's not really looking after me. It's very easy to do that, right? I think I did it yesterday. You were too busy. She's a busy lady. It's not always easy, right? And I was thinking, well, how come I'm not getting any attention? It's a very simple principle, but it works. If you really think about all major religions in the world, all moral philosophy, the golden rule, everyone knows the golden rule, right? It comes down to that. And that is, you live for the sake of the other. Actually, to realize this, that we exist for the sake of others, is actually a great achievement. And it's actually a revolution in your life. For me, it saved me so many times. Just that point. That realization. The other problem is and I'll come to family violence, and I'll explain a little bit the journey that I came to my own journey, not with family violence, but my own struggle as a man. What does it mean? And I'll have to be honest with you, in our society, we confuse sex and love a lot. There's a lot of pornography, young people. I used to ask my students in high school and IT, and I was pretty chill. I was known as a chill teacher, and they would actually share a lot of things. And yeah, they have access to so many things. But then I think to myself, yeah, you're looking at this, but what image are you getting of a woman? I mean, how are you going to approach your marriage based on that thinking? And you might say, well, look, they can think it through, and yes, most people are pretty nice, and even these kids, the boys that look at this, they're not nasty boys. Don't get me wrong. But they're going to have to navigate their way through that, and do not have the mental capacity at that age to process this often, and it can become problematic. So there's a lot in that space that needs to be done to deal with the issue of men and women relationship. Oh my goodness, we know this. The other one is that it's in the family that the school of love. It's where we learn love. So, in education, I have to say, as a member of parliament, if I can share this with you, we do a lot of very good things in schools in Australia with respect and so on. Amazing. But we do not talk about family values. I have to tell you honestly, I got a lot of pushback because people say, well, John, whose values? And that's a good question. I understand that question. But it doesn't mean we have to avoid that conversation. There is no real education in schools about family values. What I mean is, I always ask my kids, do you respect your parents? Yes. Or you got a nice laptop, did you thank your parents for it? So sometimes I was in a private school and the boys come into class and they throw their laptop on the counter, and I say, hold on, did you buy this? No, my parents bought it for me. Well, I said, that you have to take care of this. It's like showing respect to your parents. So the whole concept of what does it mean to be a good child, we all know, as our parents get older, we tend to look after them a little more, and we have that heart as, to look after our parents. How about relationship between men and women? You might say, well, they can't really do that in high school. Well, yes, you can. I think at grade 10, 11, and 12, young people can understand a little bit more about, the right relationship between men and women, how that can be. Much of it is based on consent, and consent is pretty important, right? So we have laws about consent and we have education about it. So, I have to say, as a spiritual person, if you do Google Images and you look for 3 dimensions, you get that's not my diagram. I found that on the Google Images. In other words, we live in a 3-dimensional universe, right? So up and down, left and right, front and back. Okay? For those of you who are spiritual, you might look at how the family structure is, and I have to say, as a spiritual person, universities and governments and economics is all developed by human beings, a police force, all that we have, we did a damn good job at doing that. But the one institution that I believe is established by God is the family. And the family has these core values. The love and values is the center of all of these relationships between siblings, how we love each other. There's people, I'll just finish now, Anne, because I know I'm probably going over. Yes, I'll finish with this, although I could go a little longer. But here it is. Why? I came to the conclusion sometimes, even Anne said to me, John, why are you angry? I got angry, when people are driving and so on. And I came to the conclusion that a lot of men are angry because they're angry with themselves. That the fundamental core is this: if I have certain values as a man, and I value myself, and we all do, and I don't live up to those values, what do? I become angry. And I'm not aware that I'm angry with myself, so what I do is I take that anger out on the person that's closest to you. So all faith tradition, all value systems, all values education comes down to is, we say, you have to have peace within yourself. It sounds really warm and fuzzy, but it's pretty fundamental. Because if you don't have peace within yourself, you're going to take it out on someone else. So, the historical religions that taught about peace within, I think in Islam it's saying the greatest jihad is within yourself. It's absolutely true. The greatest battle is with yourself. Because at the core, I became angry because we don't live up to our own value system. And so then what we do is we're stuck and we don't even know it. So I notice with a lot of men, I recently had an encounter and I realized this man is really angry and he's taking it out kind of on his spouse, and he's not even aware of why he's angry. So I wrote him a really long text message. I said, you know, maybe you're angry because you're angry with yourself, because you're not living up to your own values. I'll leave you with that thought. Thank you.